appear to be live. It's Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are reviewing Hayao Miyazaki's third final film, The Boy and the Heron.
How do you live? All right, we good?
Yep.
All right. So continuing the trend of not forgetting the past so that we don't run out of opening bits, let's go back to, I was in California for a whole week, right? But let's, other stuff happened there. We had a Thanksgiving there and stuff, right? But none of it was particularly noteworthy. But I do want to comment on LAX.
The
airport.
I think it's my third most hated airport on Earth as someone who has flown literally around the world in a single trip once.
Yeah, so I didn't realize this. Like when we got there, right? We had relatives coming to pick us up at the airport, right? That who lived there, who we were going to see. And we go outside and we stand. It's pretty typical. There's two lanes, right? There's the lane where all the, buses and shuttles and things come through, right? And then you cross the street and then you wait there and you look up, there's like some number like, oh, hey, we're waiting at 5D. Come get us, right? When you at Terminal X, whatever.
I realize I've never been outside at LAX. I've only ever used LAX to transfer to another flight in my entire life.
Yes, this is the first time I had been there outside, right? The only other time I was in California in my life was at LAX, transfer to a plane to Australia. Right? So that was it. So standing outside, palm trees, it's warm, at least warm for the time of year, not too bad, right? Seems good. And we stand there waiting, and we had to wait quite a while before the car comes to get us, right? They were waiting in the cell phone lot like you do, right?
Now, on one hand, I'm thinking, I think two things here. On one hand, I think it's Car Town. You'd think the cars would come a lot, but then I think it's Car Town. Is there just insane traffic, which LA might be as a city, let's just say, famous for?
Well, you might be, that's if you're, an issue if you're talking about just LA, California in general. It's particularly the LA area, right? But no, there's an issue particular to LAX.
Ooh.
And it being incredibly stupid and poorly designed, even if you're accepting car dominance, right? And not addressing that larger issue, right?
The rare above and beyond.
Yes, the rare above and beyond.
Wait, LAX only has 4 runways? There's a lot bad about LAX the more I'm looking.
So I did not realize this until, I didn't think about it too much. I was like, oh, we had to wait a while for them to come get us. And they got us and we left, right? But when we went back to LAX to go home, I was in the car, right? Trying to get to a departures zone, right? Which I had not experienced. I had only experienced being picked up at arrivals and leaving. And so we're doing this late at night, right? Because we had a red eye that took off at 1 a.m. or whatever, something like that. So we're coming in at 9 or 10 at night or something, and we're at Terminal 5, I think. I think it was 5. It wasn't a low number. And so the road in LAX is an oval kind of road. Not really an oval. It's more straight and then 2 turns and then straight back, like a loop, right? But more like a not a hairpin because you're not, it's not that tight, but you get the idea. And so we're going in and we're driving on this road and it's not moving basically at all. And I can see this Terminal 1 there, right? And it's okay, well, we're not going to Terminal 1. Just keep going. It's well, we can't keep going because the road doesn't have turnoffs for the terminals.
Wait, I've never seen an airport that was bigger than one of those tiny Michigan airports.
Like at JFK Airport, you can go and if you actually just go to JFK and you're not going to any terminal, you can just drive in a big loop and not go to any departures or arrivals and then leave.
You get off the freeway to get on an airport freeway that literally has exits here's the exit for Terminal 1. Here's the exit for Terminal 2.
So if you're not going to Terminals 1, 2, 3, you just pass right by them and you go to the off-ramp for Terminal 4. And so is it possible that there's so many people going to the airport that it gets backed up? It's like, it can happen, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Right? You only really have to wait once you get off the ramp, and then you're waiting, at the terminal, basically. But here, everyone who's going to a high-numbered terminal is stuck, waiting behind everyone at the low-numbered terminals until they can squeak past and get to the next and it's basically just this block of non-moving cars.
That is terrifying, considering it is the 4th busiest airport in the world.
And it's even worse. Imagine if you went there and you drop someone off at Terminal 1, and now to leave, you have to basically sit behind everyone at Terminals 2, 3, 4, until you can get to the exit all the way at the other end. There isn't like a quick escape path of any kind.
If only there were an invention, like some sort of car, but it went on rails and it wasn't stuck in traffic.
We're not addressing the larger issue, right? We're saying that, like, I think other than that, I think that is like really the biggest wrong thing. I didn't notice anything else at the airport that was particularly awful compared to other airports. Other than that, that was like by far the standout, complete garbage design problem that I've never seen any other airport, big or small, so foolishly constructed.
It's extra funny because when you first told me this story, I had, like, my mom had just come and visited us in New York. So I got to drive through for the first time the brand new LaGuardia, like the completely redesigned one. And it like goes above and beyond to make sure car traffic cannot get backed up in there, is in and out as fast as possible. It's got like, follow this color and you will get to this destination, like signage everywhere. It's actually kind of amazing.
Yeah, no. The new LaGuardia is fine. The terminals are nice in the inside.
I just wish it flew anywhere I go.
There are only 3 problems with LaGuardia Airport.
Literally, there's only one problem I can say. Nowhere I ever fly has a flight that leaves from LaGuardia.
Well, there are places I could,
Not places I go.
The problem is that flights often don't take off there.
Yep.
or have problems, right? 2, they haven't put a city bike dock in the airport or any kind of secure bicycle park. It's close enough. I could bike.
Yeah. I mean, Emily and I have walked home from flights at that airport before.
There are city bike docks just outside of the airport. It's like you really just can't throw one dock in there somewhere. There's so much parking lot. Just like throw one in with like 20 bikes or something.
Like I would literally put my backpack on and take a city bike to that airport and fly. It would be amazing.
Exactly. It's and the third problem with LaGuardia Airport is that obviously the only public transportation that goes there is the bus, which is fine for me because the bus that does that is at a convenient spot.
Yeah, the last time I tried to use that bus, it's in a pretty good spot over here too, but my experience was I go to the bus stop. I'm paranoid. I get to airports like way earlier than I probably need to. So I'm waiting for the bus. The bus comes and it's already completely full, and then it just leaves. And then another bus comes and it's also just completely full, and then it leaves, and then I called a cab.
No, I never had that problem.
I had that happen, and Emily had it happen. But that was a long time ago. Now I just take cabs to that airport, though, because it's like a 15-minute cab ride, honestly.
Yeah, I just don't use a car if it's not necessary, and the bus is fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, but there should be a train that goes to that airport.
There should. But it's
Why not a ferry? Why not a ferry, too? Right?
It's just funny, too, because, like, all the people I have known in my life who ended up in L.A., don't never seem super happy about LA, like they had to go there for some reason, but it just doesn't seem like it's a great place to live compared to New York, and I'm saying as a New Yorker.
What I thought of it before ever going there in my life, right?
Well, you probably imagined a 16-lane highway, and that's it.
I mean, Chicago actually had the scarier highway.
I know exactly what highway you're talking about, too. I grew up out that way.
But there's, but LA, it has, positive aspects, right? But I wouldn't live there.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I would trade for the weather, though.
Oh, yeah. If you could have a New York City with LA weather, but then already we're talking magic. So I want a New York City with like Galapagos weather, which is just a lot of Asian cities. And then you have other problems. Anyway, so instead of a news, I got a little geek bite here because Hilda, the absolutely phenomenal animated series on Netflix that is based on the comics which are apparently good. I've never actually read them, by Luke Pearson. Hilda's just great. I've talked about it on Geek Nights before, but it's not super long. So the final season of 3 of the animated series, which covers, as best I can tell, all of the comics, the comic itself being complete, is now on Netflix. So if you want to watch Hilda, literally all of it is just on Netflix, and there isn't even that much of it. So season 3 seems like it wraps up whatever long-form plot threads there might be in a otherwise largely episodic, charming, indie comic feeling animated series. But having watched a few episodes of season 3, we're pretty much just powered through to the end, and I recommend that all humans watch Hilda if they have the capacity to do so. And if Scott ever watches it, we will do a show on it. If not, at some point, I'll just randomly do a show with Emily if we have to skip a show because one of us is out of town for Geek Nights stuff, generally.
Seems unlikely because that's not even in the queue. The queue's already large.
I mean, this comic is the kind of thing that you would just read and really try to get me to read to do a show on, but they happen to have made one of the better animated TV shows I've seen based on it.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else going on?
Not much. I think we can just dive right into things of the day. So this thing is called Punch Forever, and it was uploaded by a YouTube account called Speedoru, which has a Patreon that's just called like Speedo. And I couldn't find a ton of info with cursory investigation into this person's deal, other than they seem to just make funny animations. And their Patreon has a warning that there is, quote, NSFW stuff if you go above the $5 tier. I didn't look into what that is. But this video, standalone, is 8 minutes long. And imagine one of those old anime like Dragon Half. Now imagine if someone just made a brand new show, animated almost more in an American style, like almost more like a Powerpuff Girls, like a modern American style, but drawn and filtered in a way to look like it was made in the era with the tools that a show like Dragon Half was made. And imagine that it is like funny, deep parody of all the kinds of anime that are like that, with those kinds of tournaments and nonsense and that kind of humor. Just all crammed into this, like, it's a legit anime episode, basically. I don't know, like, I don't want to even just watch it. There's a lot going on here, and I think other people need to see this before I have a lot to say about it. So what do you got?
I mean, the aesthetic of this thing is really something, and also I think it's been quite a while since we've, that like I've seen an original, like, free internet animations,
right?
Like what those right?
I see a lot of shorter ones, but I guess what stands out is that it's funny, but a lot of times things like this tend to be either the joke overstays its welcome, they only really have one joke, like it's kind of just tedious. Every time this feels like it's about to...
Trigger had like Inferno Cop and Turning Girls, right? And then you had there were some others.
But the production values on this are really high.
Senpai Club was one.
Yep.
Right?
But every time this feels like it's about to overstay its welcome, it either escalates, swerves, or literally just fast forwards to the next thing that'll be funny.
Yeah. I think I need to get YouTube to recommend me the people out there who are making these sorts of things.
So YouTube recommended this to me recently. That's how I found it. And I think it's because Emily and I have both been watching a lot of independent animation lately on my YouTube account.
I'll just watch this channel and hopefully YouTube will sort itself out.
Yeah. Between this and watching, there's all those animation memes where like kids who are into making art are making like 6-second animation loops that then they do effects on and put over a song loop. That's been like a thing for several years now. Watching a lot of those seemed to be what brought me specifically to have this recommended to me.
All right. So when I was a kid, in the days before Game Boys, right, and maybe even in those days, I would do a lot of, puzzles, right? You do some puzzles like on the mini page in the newspaper. There would be like, word searches and find the difference and find the hidden thing.
Turn it upside down to figure out what the Fox detective has to say about the situation in the image.
Exactly. I also would also get, there were these, I think they still make them, these yes and no books, like yes and no, KNOW, where you'd have an invisible ink pen and each page of the book had like a different puzzle that you would have to
I
solve.
remember something like that being for sale in the Scholastic Book Club at some point.
Yeah, Scholastic Book Club also would often sell various puzzle books and then also in the grocery store aisle, obviously you could buy puzzle books, and you still can in the year 2023. But there's a certain aesthetic to those sorts of cheap printed puzzles, right? Where like, the ink isn't completely solid and is like speckled with like white dots in it because they didn't, they're not putting as much ink in the printing press. And the art is very like repetitive, right? There's just a certain feeling to it, and
It's a minimum effort.
Yeah, so this website, Crazy Dad, has a bunch of puzzles on it, of various kinds, following that aesthetic, right? They got your Sudokus and mazes and all kinds of stuff. But one puzzle in particular, the Haunted Mirror Maze puzzle, like really nails that aesthetic so hard of this was printed in some book and your kid has a whole book of them doing them in the back seat of the car that you bought for like $5 at a rest stop. But it's also super cute with ghosts, vampires, and zombies.
The vampire has really good faces.
Oh, yeah. And it's also a really interesting kind of puzzle. It's obviously not like at the maximum puzzle level, right? It's not super challenging, but it's a little more challenging than it looks at first, right? So it's sort of like a P-cross, and where there's a grid, and on the sides of the grid, it's telling you if you're standing at this point in the grid looking inwards, you will see this many bad guys, right? Ghosts, vampires, and zombies, right? However, right, vampires, you can see if you're looking directly at them, right? But you can't see them if they're reflected in a mirror.
Oh,
right?
that is way more complex than I thought it was going to be as I'm looking at this.
Right. Ghosts, you can see, I think is the opposite, something like that.
Ghosts cannot be seen directly.
Oh, right. You can't see a ghost directly. You can only see a ghost if there's a mirror reflecting, right? And then a zombie is just a zombie. You can just see it. And so you have a grid, and you have numbers, and you have mirrors, and so it says, if you're standing here looking inwards, right, you could draw a path from the edge of the grid straight forward, bounce it off all the mirrors, right, until it hits the end. And then you could say, well, if you follow that path, you can see 5 bad monsters, right? And you have to basically and it tells you on the grid, there are 2 ghosts, 5 vampires, 10 zombies, however many. And you have to place them in the grid correctly. And there's only one legit way to place them that will work with all the different numbers in the side of the grid. It's pretty fun puzzle, and you can just download just like a shit ton of. He's got 100 books worth of them.
Yep, the hardest, and they're in vague order from book 1 to book 100. It says the hardest are in book 100.
Each book has 24 puzzles, and there's 100 books, so that's 2,400 puzzles in PDF format that you could just download. They don't charge any money. They just have PayPal donate links, and you can donate if you want. And they have a Discord, I guess.
See, it's one thing to have, like, someone could theoretically have just written an algorithm to generate a lot of these, but the fact that they're ranked by difficulty, that exponentially increases what I perceive to be the effort to make this good.
Yep. And also the artistic merit, even if you don't care about the puzzles, right?
Look at that vampire.
Yeah, and the artwork that's around the puzzles on the pages in the book. It's like these are puzzles that somebody, did some amount of work on. So
in the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book is, did Scott update the website? He did not. It still says The Murder Bot Diaries.
Write that down right now, I guess.
But we were doing Walk On Girl, the book, since we talked about the anime movie quite some time ago on Geek Nights. Otherwise, we will be at MagFest doing a bunch of panels, very likely at PAX East, doing at least one panel, maybe more. And it is very hard to speculate on what else we might be up to beyond that particular time horizon. Also, can't say exactly how many episodes we'll do for the rest of this year, but December's looking okay, actually, in my calendar. I think we got all our heavy lifting out already and in November.
Yeah, I mean, the only things I have on my calendar in December, right, is basically, I got one extra day off work because all the days off work are Mondays, which I already have off. And, one weekend doing holiday biz and hockey, I guess. I don't, there's nothing really, not until MagFest, right? It's basically nothing MagFest, nothing PAX East. That's the current schedule. No plans, really.
Plus, that hockey is warranting increasing attention due to the quality.
Very much so, yeah.
The quality that is being demonstrated. All the Rangers fans at my work have started to come out of the woodwork and talk about the team every goddamn day now. Like people I didn't know were Rangers fans are just like talking about them all the time.
And first of all, right? They're doing extremely well.
Yeah,
like the best points percentage. They don't have the most points, but they have the most points percentage of any team in the NHL, which basically means you're in first place. You're the best team at. Right?
But they also have the third. They have the third best power play. They have an upper tier penalty kill.
Right, but also you have to keep in mind that every other New York sports team has shit the bed, right? The Mets and the Yankees didn't even make the complete garbage, right? The Knicks, whatever. The Nets, I haven't even heard from them. I don't know what's happening over there. Giants, they got some story going on with Tommy Cutlets. You know about the Tommy Cutlets action?
I don't know anything about what's going on with
Cutlets? Well, it's very exciting, but I'm not going to tell you now. The point is, it doesn't matter what Tommy Cutlets does. The Giants are so far out of a playoff spot. They're guaranteed to.
I know about this. I know he's real good. It's not going to help.
Kinda. Not really.
According to the AI in Google, he is the passing paisan.
That is correct. So then it's a fun story, but it's not a winning story, right? So the Giants are going nowhere. They can't. They're done. And the Jets obviously also have been done since the beginning of the season. So there is literally no New York sports. And Islanders are also, I guess, better than expected, but not good. So it's all Rangers are the only New York sports team with anyone to this current time. So
all right, main bit. So we did see Hayao Miyazaki's latest movie, The Boy and the Heron, or How Do You Live? Which is it's kind of funny that in English the title is The Boy and the Heron, considering that I found a note in the Wikipedia where the descendant of the author of the book How Do You Live expressed perplexion at how the movie was tied to the book.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't read the book, and Rim didn't choose the book for the book club, even though he could have.
I almost did. It was a real hard choice yet again.
Maybe I'll still read it. Nothing's stopping me from reading it, but I haven't read it at this point. But I am 100% sure, based on everything I know from everybody and all the information available to me, that this movie does not actually bear much resemblance to that book.
Yep.
Right? There may be some thematic connection, or it's not completely disconnected, but it is not an adaptation of the book the way that the Fist of the North Star anime is an adaptation of the manga.
Yeah. It'd be like GeekNights as adapted from Fist of the North Star.
Yeah.
But we saw it. It's a Miyazaki movie, and there's a lot to unpack about it, but I guess my main takeaway is that unlike a lot of other movies that I enjoyed a lot more, and I'm not saying I didn't enjoy this movie. I actually did enjoy this movie. This movie, even people who didn't like it, people who liked it, we all kind of kept talking about it. Like, it's come up in a lot of conversations. So there's definitely something going on here. And every time I spend more than a small amount of brain energy thinking about the movie, I think of more lit crit ideas about it, which means that he did something right. But I also see a lot of people reacting extremely negatively to this movie for a lot of reasons that we can get into.
Well, I mean, I think in general is that you look at all the movies that Miyazaki has, directed, been heavily involved in, right? not the ones that Studio Ghibli did that he wasn't so involved in.
Yep.
Right, like A Whisper of the Heart or whatever. And it's like basically he made basically everything on the list is like masterpiece, right? It's like starting with Cagliostro, Nausicaa, Laputa, Princess Mononoke, Totoro, Porco Rosso. I think I don't think I've even missed any. Right? Kiki,
Yep.
and Spirited Away, right? I don't think I've missed any.
I don't think you have.
But right, those are the masterpieces, right? And after Spirited Away was Howl's Moving Castle. Now, was Howl's Moving Castle, bad? No, it wasn't bad. But it wasn't. It was the first one that wasn't a masterpiece, at least as far as I say, right?
Well, because it was visually striking, thematically really good, but the story kind of starts nowhere and goes even more nowhere, and then just
you
stops.
can't really tell what's going on or why the characters are doing what they're doing. Or,
Yep. And then it kind of doesn't really end so much as it kind of just peters out, and then the credits roll.
Yeah. And then Ponyo similarly, right? It's like, what's actually the story here? What's going on, right? And so forth. And I think, in that sense, it's like the movies he's done since Spirited Away, right, have all, in my opinion, not been masterpieces the way the other ones were, right?
Yeah.
So he's basically set this ultra high bar for himself with a row of, consecutive masterpieces that are all S tier, every single one, right? Legendary. And then kept going and has done, not garbage, right? Nothing bad. You're not going to look at any of these and be like that he was directing, at least.
Yeah.
And say, wow, that was terrible. That's awful, garbage, F, right? Don't even want to look at that thing. Would not watch if, whatever. Never bad, but not masterpiece like he did before. And so that's always disappointing, right? And you still, even now, it's like, I guess it took this long to where it's like, okay, I guess if he does another one, we have to keep the expectation in the not masterpiece zone, right? Rather than before, where it's like, well, he hasn't done a masterpiece in several years, but I'm still holding out hope for one. Let's go see The Boy and the Heron. Now it's like, okay, it's not going to be a masterpiece ever again, probably.
Well, especially because there's something, the Boy and the Heron visually is not one. It does an echo of what
it's just visually S tier.
Well, because it does a thing on the same like the same type of thing that Millennium Actress did, but in a very different way, and it kind of goes through the styles of visual and thematic storytelling that his movies evoked over the years. It's almost like Millennium Actressing through his own movies as Hayao Miyazaki, the creator. So the tone and like the way it's like the animation's beautiful and shifts along. But in terms of the core of what it's about and the core of the feelings you feel, The Wind Rises and The Boy and the Heron are very similar in that they're very much Hayao Miyazaki is sitting there behind the screen yelling lit crit and personal ideas at you via animation.
Right. And there isn't, there are some characters that have, strength, right? And there are some, powerful scenes here and there, right?
Yep.
But, like the Howl's Moving Castle, it's I guess Boy and the Heron's actually better to follow story-wise than some of those other ones.
I think The Boy and the Heron actually has a more intelligible plot than Howl's Moving Castle.
Very much so, yes. But it's still not extremely tight, right? It's still a little bit, what's going on here? A little bit, right? Like, why?
Yep, I've evolved. I've evolved through
okay,
4.
I get it, but that wasn't entirely clear, or stuff just comes out of nowhere.
Yep,
Yeah.
But upon further thought, like they all do kind of make sense. But an example would be Emily saw the movie in an Academy Awards screening before we saw it.
2 times.
Yep. So Emily saw it, and Emily was like, I'm not going to talk about it until you also see it, because I want to hear what you have to say about the fascist parakeets. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait to see what could be interpreted as a fascist parakeet. And then in this movie, when there's the human-sized parakeets carrying around Il Duce posters and literally enacting a fully fascist parakeet society, about midway through the movie, Yeah, that was there, and I've
That wasn't
evolved.
midway. That was close to the end of the movie.
I lose track of when things.
75 to 80% of the way through the movie.
I think it was less than that. I think it's more like maybe 3/5 of the way through.
I don't know. The
You
parakeets
encounter
don't
them
appear
pretty
until
quick.
pretty late.
Well,
They
true.
appear pretty late.
There is a long segment that's probably longer than I remember of, are you gonna kill the weird bird or not?
Yeah,
But
the parakeets show up pretty late.
I've evolved through several interpretations of the fascist parakeets just by thinking about this movie.
That's just because of who you are that you're focusing so much on them. And of course, yes, they are.
Oh no, but they're an example. Every part of this movie, I have a really big brain read about the scene where the dad, Indiana Jones samurai style, tries to go bust into the tower to save his son, and the birds come out, and he gets confused. Like, I got thoughts about that, about how that is specifically Miyazaki making a point about how the ideas that led to your work don't actually matter to the viewer. The viewer sees what they see and interprets how they interpret it, and the dad doesn't fucking understand what's going on in your tower. Anyway.
So the overall structure of the movie is a very familiar formula that he's used before, right? In most things, and I've seen the formula used by other people as well.
Character goes to the underworld via a gatekeeper of some kind.
Who has a human, normal human world drama of some kind, right? So in this case, there's a kid whose mom dies, and his dad moves him out to a remote place out of the city and marries his mom's younger sister, basically.
Yep.
Right? And so he has a family drama.
Yep.
Right?
The child is understandably not taking it well in a way that very few people would, I think.
Yeah. And it's about, all the feelings that the kid has in that situation, right? And also the feelings that the new mom has, right?
Yeah.
And the dad, he's just sort of like, I'm the dad. Oh.
I'm a character in The Wind Rises. I'm off not understanding why my son and wife are upset, making fighter planes for World War II.
Yeah. So the dad, his feelings aren't really a subject of the film at all. Other than that,
I think the dad's
dude, your wife died and you just went and married her younger sister. That's kind of
the dad not understanding the situation is definitely
the year he did that.
Yep. But the dad not understanding the situation is definitely the point of the dad. And Miyazaki did note that this is somewhat autobiographical about him having to flee with his family to the countryside as a child.
Yeah. But anyway, and so then what happens is that it's like, okay, you've created this kid. He has this dramatic human real world situation. And then it's like, haha, we'll go on a series of adventure. We'll go on an adventure into another world, another dimension, another somewhere, something, right? And have a series of scenes, each dealing with something different. And, where each has like a different message, the same way that the Galaxy Express, mom is killed, right? I'll go on a train and there'll be a bunch of different scenes and different planets. And then at the end, right, wrap up back.
The way you describe that, I think, is really important because it's very telling about the parts of this movie that don't work well. It does just feel like a whole bunch of set piece scenes that are connected by the thinnest thread.
Yep. Not on Galactic Railroad, a train again, but the same thing where it's like has a problem, goes on the train, bunch of different things happen, right? But also Spirited Away, right? It's like in the car with the parents, right? Parents are turned into pigs, has to do a whole bunch of adventures with Dragon Boy, right?
Yep.
And then back to the parents at the end, back to the human.
But Spirited Away,
situation.
when you watch it, the scenes don't just hard cut between each other with these big gaps. It feels like one long building intense movie that just follows a continuous momentum.
There's a logical reason, right, and explanation for each sort of development into the next, right? There are transitions in Spirited Away, right? And there's also, connections and other threads that sort of hold the thing together, right, tightly, to where here, it's like you're doing one thing and it's like, what is holding, it's like, okay, you go into the next, suddenly you're in this tower, but now you're in a boat place and there's totally different characters.
And a pelican is going to give you a Japanese kamikaze pilot soliloquy and then die in a scene. And then that is never addressed again.
Yeah. It's like, what is how did we get from before to here? It's like, there was a thing that no one explained very well, and it comes back, but it only comes back briefly and still isn't explained.
Yep.
It's like instead of a Chekhov's gun, it's like, yes, look at my Chekhov's gun, examine its shape and its size, and let's just put it over here. And then when it comes back in a big way, because that's how you tell stories. Instead, It's like you saw a Chekhov's gun at the corner of your eye, and you couldn't quite get a good look at it. And then a few scenes later, you see it again, but only briefly. And then you never see it again ever. And it's like, did it fire? Maybe it fired off in the distance, and I heard like an echo of the gunshot. It's like, I noticed it. It wasn't invisible, but like, it's not clear.
Yep.
I can't get a hold on it.
And I think we need to take a moment to like not knowing what it was about, and then seeing the trailer that was only made for like the US, because like Japan, there was no trailer. It was just like, hey, the Miyazaki's coming.
Right, exactly. In Japan, I mean, in the story, there is a character who builds a tower and then writes a book while they're living in the tower.
And they had disappeared from the world to live in this tower.
They die/disappear while leaving the book unfinished. And it's like, yes, Miyazaki, we know that's what you've been trying to do for a long time now. And the tobacco isn't working. And so you somehow unluckily finished, I guess, this movie. And we're left with no choice. You couldn't make it even longer. So you had no choice but to release it to the world. And in Japan, everyone knows who you are. So you don't need advertising or marketing. You can just make a movie poster and nothing else, put it in the theater, and everyone will come see it. And in fact, that may help you, because if people see the trailer, maybe they'll be like, actually, that doesn't look right.
Yeah, well, the trailer looked pretty good, but here's what I'm getting at. Emily also warned me, because I was like, oh, yeah, the magic bird. The heron's a magic bird. And then I was like, yeah, cool magic bird. Emily's like, it's not cool. You're not going to like it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting there to be like a literal heron or the heron to be a character. I thought it would just be like, yes, the heron is a symbol, and like maybe as a heron that flies past an important scene. It's like, no, the heron is a full-on character that talks and is involved.
And we got to be clear.
It's a huge supporting character.
Whatever you think the heron is going to be like, is not. It is.
It is not.
I think that I'm going to use a phrase that I'm quoting a show that I don't think Scott watched. Gross and weird.
It is a gross and weird heron.
It is a gross and weird heron. It's really funny. There's a scene early on, we're not going to like spoil this movie, obviously, but there's a scene early on where like the heron clearly is like, there's something up with it, and it's trying to attract this kid's attention. And then it escalates so fast from, is the heron magical, to the heron is like, hey kid, you want to see a dead body? And being creepy in the window. Like,
pretty much.
And it just gets worse and worse as the movie goes on. But there's also
a creepy thing. I guess it's not creepy, but sort of an ew thing in this movie is that there's a lot of birds, not just the heron.
There's a lot of bird shit in this movie.
There's a lot of bird. Basically, whenever birds appear, they start shitting all over everything. Like there is bird shit everywhere.
Oh, where did I read this? It was on like Verge or something. There was an article, a long review of this movie that basically was only focused on the bird shit, and the main thesis was
you couldn't. I mean, it's not like it's the whole movie's just bird shit the movie, but it's to the point where you can't not notice it.
Yeah.
It is
so the review's premise was this was animated. Every single pixel of bird shit was 100% intentional and handcrafted for the viewer.
Correct. Yes.
And there is so much more of it than you think there's going to be.
Oh, yes. You can't not see it.
And there's definitely some allegory going on around the concept of a parakeet, a parrot, perhaps parroting the work that they saw from the person that they worked for, but they don't understand its essence. Almost like Mary and the Witch's Flower looked like a Ghibli movie or looked like a Miyazaki movie, but was bad. Anyway, I think this movie takes a direct swipe at Mary and the Witch's Flower, but I digress.
I don't know. I didn't really think of that when I was watching it.
I thought about that pretty early on, and I feel pretty strongly about it.
Okay. But yeah, it's like, should you go see it? It's like, well, by the usual Geek Night standard of there is an anime movie in the theaters in the US, right? It's like
that's not a sequel.
you're not gonna waste your. It's not a sequel or an adaptation, or at least a faithful adaptation. Right? It's like, are you gonna spend your money and be, upset? I guess maybe depending how much theaters cost where you are, but then you could just watch it for cheaper later when it comes out, right?
Yep.
Streaming or pirating or whatever system, right? You're not gonna be upset about spending the time it takes to watch it. At least I wasn't.
It wasn't even that long. It was 2 hours long.
Yeah, but if you're expecting a Miyazaki masterpiece, don't expect that, because that's not what you're gonna get.
Expect something more like The Wind Rises, in that you're gonna leave and you're gonna think, huh. And if you're the kind of person who likes lit crit, you're gonna keep thinking, huh. And if you don't like to do that kind of critical analysis of a film, I think that's the end of your thoughts about this movie.
Right. I mean, the number one benefit, the positive thing you're going to get, obviously, is the stunning animation, right? He loves to do his, sort of blobby tentacle, sort of liquidy animations.
Oh, the liquid looks
his
like
hallmark.
The water, the liquid, all that looks so good in this movie. It stands out.
There was a scene where like they're on a boat and like some water gets in the boat, and it's like you can see the water splashing around in the floor of the boat near their feet, and it's like it's translucent, and the lines in the wood are like refracting through the water when the water moves across, and it's like someone, for that thing that's in the corner, like you're supposed to be looking at the characters' faces in that scene, right?
No, I was looking at the water.
Yeah, someone took the time to animate that water. It's like, goddamn, right? It's like that's what they're doing that no one else is doing. That's the primary reason to see the movie. But secondly, there are, some fun characters like the grandmas.
Oh, the grandmas are good. Also,
grandmas are real good.
There are, despite the movie's subject matter and everything we've said, there are several actual laugh out loud moments along the way that.
Oh yeah, there's some good comedy. There's some cute little white dudes.
The scene where he's with the whole
merchandise, right? So he's always got to have some cute Soot Sprite-esque thing going on. Only now they're white.
Yep, the scene with the hole in the beak might have been the funniest scene in the whole movie.
Oh, that was a funny one. Yeah. There's another thing though that I think is a positive from this movie, at least for me, is that I've noticed at least Shigeru Miyamoto and Miyazaki both expressing this particular feeling that is a feeling that I also had often in my life, particularly in my childhood. Of there's some sort of hidden place or a hidey hole or a secret path in the woods, or right. And it's like, from Zelda 1 to, most Miyazaki movies.
Yep.
Right. It's like here in this movie, The Boy and the Heron, it's, there's a secret tower in the woods, right? What's in there? And it's like just that urge of, like even in my life today, it's like I'll be walking around like a normal ass building and I'll see doors and I'm like, where's that door go? What's behind that door? I'll be like in the train station and there's like a door that's locked shut, right? And it's clearly just maintenance shit behind the door.
But I still want to see, and I'll even check hey, is it unlocked?
Urge, look at this light shining in, so I'll peek into like a hole in the door and I'll see the stuff that's in there and be like,
hey,
ooh, right?
Remember at the Janelle Monáe concert when I discovered that we were in fact sitting on an elevator?
Right. And it's just, this movie is particularly good at evoking that same emotion, sort of nostalgic, explore the dark, small, hidden place, mysterious area feeling.
Yep.
And if you want to feel that feeling, this movie is a good way to feel that feeling.
Coupled with the main character moves to this house. There's the creepy tower in the backyard. The character does what any normal person would do and immediately checks it out because what the fuck is that? Like immediately.
Right.
And all the old people who live there are like, oh yeah, that's the fucking tower where the guy disappeared. And we sealed it off because there's a bunch of drama. And that only made him want to go into the tower more. Like that is correct. And then
good job.
And then the old lady's even like, oh yeah, like your mom disappeared in that tower once for like a year and then came back and
no one ever told you this?
Yeah. What's dad up to? And then when the kid disappears, the dad immediately is like, oh no, he's in the fucking tower. Let's roll. And like rolls up on the tower ready to storm it. Like,
yeah, it's like,
there is zero ambiguity that the tower is real and that what happens inside of it literally happens. This is not a was it all a dream kind of movie. This is literal.
I do appreciate that also, right? There's a lot of times, there'll be a situation where it's like even, Escaflowne, right?
Yeah.
Like, at the very end, it's like, did it really happen? Right? Whereas here, it's like, it fucking happened.
Yup.
Absolutely. Everyone saw it. No one was like, what, you're crazy talk. What do you talk? Everyone saw it. Everyone believes it.
Yep, all the old people are
Directly-
like, oh, the family's fucking with that tower again. I don't know why. We warn him every time.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's the magic I've seen before. Yep. So yeah.
Yeah, it's at some point I wouldn't be opposed to doing a more like critical analysis episode, but we'd have to just assume people have seen the movie because I do not have the energy to summarize the movie.
I think I'd have to read the book at least first, right?
I don't know. Everything I'm reading implies that like nobody will see a significant connection between the two.
I think, but you think that's the thing is I want to read it to be able to really see what is
Yeah.
isn't.
And we will.
There is a
We will
point
read
in
it.
which in the movie the kid is reading a book and that book is titled "How Do You Live?"
Yeah.
So that's a little bit Lord of the Ringsy.
Or it could be Never-Ending Story.
There and back again.
I think that was a solid show for a review.